Hey guys, how's it going? This is RyGuyGaming here with another Roblox Lua tutorial, and today we will be taking a look at something that is very critical in any kind of programming language, but will help us out a lot when it comes to programming for Lua and Roblox. So let's go ahead and make a script, and we are going to create it in the server script storage. We could put it in workspace, but it's just a good idea to get in the habit of putting scripts here that will run on the server, and so that's why we're going to put it there. And all we're going to do to start off is we are going to make a program or a script that sings happy birthday to a guy named Fred. So there is our first line, and I'm going to copy and paste and paste and paste, and then I will just change this line to Dear Fred. And now when we run this, it will print it down in the output just like we wanted it to. But now let's go back and take another look at our script, which I am going to rename real quick to say happy birthday so that later we remember what it is. Now, if you look at it, you can notice something pretty obvious here, and that is the fact that we have repeated the same thing 3 times, almost 4 times with a slight variation. And when it comes to computer programmers, usually we're pretty lazy people, and not just programmers really, but pretty much anyone. Even though we just copied and pasted it a couple times, it's still doing the same thing over and over again. We want to only have to do it once, especially considering if we want to change something, like if we wanted to say, instead of birthday, we said Happy New Year's or Merry Christmas to you, and we sang that song. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike for using the text here, since I'm not actually like playing the song. But what we're going to do today is we are going to learn what a function is. Now, there are 3 main reasons you would use a function. The first is to make code more legible, so that it is easier to understand. The second is to avoid repetitive code, and the third is to make code more modular, which means you can make it easier to change. So what we're going to do first is define a function at the top of our program. So I'm going to space those down a little bit, and I'm going to type in the keyword function. This tells Lua that I am going to be making a function, and I am just going to call it happy. And so then I hit enter. So let's go over the syntax of this a little. So function is a Lua keyword. It lets the interpreter know that what comes next we want to be a function. Happy, or what comes after function, is the name of the function. It can be anything you want as long as it conforms to, I believe they conform to the same rules as the variable names. Although I wouldn't recommend putting numbers in them. Usually they have something to do with verbs. Here, obviously, we don't have a verb, but most of the time they're like, do this, or on touched, or on clicked. You know, I'm sure you've seen them if you've ever looked at a Roblox script before. And then these 2 parentheses, just put them back to back like this, and we'll get more into those later. And then to close a function out, you need end. This is different for a lot of languages, so this is how Lua does it. And so what we're going to do is in here, we are going to type print happy. Well, let's see. Do I still? Okay, yep. We're going to just do that. Now, when we come down here, we are going to replace these with this. And so, oops, I missed one. And so now when we run it, we get almost the same thing, but if you can see here, let me zoom in really quick. There's a little ×2 next to the first happy birthday to you. I don't know why it does that, but it does that for some reason when you print two functions in a row. It's kind of weird, but that's just the way it decides to do it. But it was weird that it didn't do it the first time. So anyways, as you can see, our code isn't really much less repetitive because we still have to type happy 3 times. However, it would be a lot easier to change if we wanted to change this to like Merry Christmas or Happy New Year or whatever we were taught. Happy Holidays, sorry. PC. Just kidding. We would only have to change it twice now. So let's go over a couple of things before we move on. First of all, this function must be defined above where you call it from. Since the Lua interpreter reads from top to bottom, if you were to have this up on top of it, it would see, here, let me just type it up here so you can visualize this. It would see this and it would be like, what the heck does this mean? Because there are no built-in Lua functions called happy, and so it would freak out and it wouldn't know what to do and your script will crash. In fact, let me just show you. See, it crashes. Even though happy is right here, it hasn't read that far yet, and it won't read that far because it immediately stops the execution as soon as it crashes. And so all of your function definitions have to be before you actually call them. And to call them, you just use the name of the function followed by the open close parenthesis. Now, before we move on again, I'm going to tell you the kind of the flow of how functions work within your program. So let's say let's get rid of this just so it's a little easier to understand. So as my interpreter comes down, or as my mouse, it reads this, it reads all this, and now it knows what happy means. Now it comes down here and it sees that we want to call happy. So what it does is it jumps back up to here, it does what's inside of happy, pausing this. So this is paused right now. We're just doing this line. So it will print this. When it is done with this, when it reaches the end, it will continue on where it left off. So in this instance, it will print happy birthday, dear Fred. And then on this one, it will go back in, do all that, and then it will terminate because that's the end of the program. So I hope that makes sense. Alright, now let's say we wanted to sing to 2 people. Let's say we wanted to sing to someone named Sarah. So we'll take all this and we'll do this and we will say Sarah. And so now we have this twice, and when we run it, it will give us the happy birthday to Fred and then happy birthday to Sarah like we want. However, if you haven't guessed yet, there probably is a better way to do this. We'll just make a couple new functions. So we'll have a function here and we'll call it sing to Fred, and then I will put end here and I will indent all of this because it's a really good idea to get into the habit of indenting whatever is inside of a function. And then I will copy this and paste this, and now I will say sing to Sarah, and I will change this again to Sarah. And now all we have to do down here for our program is say sing to Fred, and then sing to Sarah. And now when we run it, we will get the same thing. Now, of course, if you can tell, this doesn't look like we've done that much less. It looks like we've actually done more. So the next logical step is to make a program that can sing to everyone. So we only have to have this function once. Well, if you remember from a couple times ago, we learned how to make variables. And it would be smart to, if you were to store the name of the person you wanted to sing to in a variable and call it like name or something, for example. But if you notice, Lua underlines it in blue because we don't have a variable called name. So what we could do is we could just come up here and set a name, so Fred, and then we could, I'm going to change the name of this to just Sing, and then so now it will replace name with Fred when this is executed, which would be what we wanted. And then if we wanted to sing to Sarah, we could just, so we could say sing, and then if we wanted to sing to Sarah, we could say name equals Sarah, and then we'll do sing again. And now when we test it, we get what we want. It sings to Fred and then it sings to Sarah. But there is still a better way to do this. While we have reduced this down a little bit, there's still a better way to do this. And that is by using parameters. Now, if you have never done programming before, you probably aren't aware of what a parameter is, and it's kind of hard to understand, so I'm going to take this slow. So what a parameter is it's just a variable, and the variable is local to within a function, which means that only the function that you create it in can see it. But the way to assign this variable is when you call the function. So if I was to type sing down here, at the same time I would also assign the name variable. And so to do that, what you do is you put your parameter names inside of the parentheses. So for example here, we want a variable named name, so we will create the variable up here. Now, when we call the function, we can't just do this, because this will throw an error. It will say that it was that function sing was expecting one argument or something like that. And what that means is that we have to set name equal to something. And to do this, all we have to do is pass in a value. Now obviously for this one we're going to want a string value, and so we'll pass in the string. And now when we run it, it works like it normally would. It sings to Fred. But now, if we wanted to sing to Sarah, all we'd have to do is replace Fred with Sarah when we call the function. And now it does it twice, singing to both people. And so, what if we wanted to sing to two people? Now, all we would have to do is make a second parameter. So let's make a name too, and we will change this up a little bit so that it will make sense. Name to ... exclamation point. And now when we call the function, so that we don't get an error, we will have to pass in two values separated by a comma, just like the names of the variables are. Now, how do we know which order they're going to be stored in? Is it going to be Fred in name, or is it going to be Sarah in name? Well, the way that these are stored in these is basically a one-to-one. So the one in the first spot goes to the one in the second, the one in this spot goes in the one in this spot, and so on. And for fun, let's just add a third one, and we'll call it number. And then we will also pass in a number just because we can. So we'll do like a 3. And so as you can see, you can pass in whatever you want into these. But ideally, they would have something to do with your code. So just to show you this works when we run it, it says Fred and Sarah like we wanted it to. And so that is functions for you. And so I hoped you learned something from this tutorial. I tried to take it slow so that we could figure this out together and learn how to do functions, because they're such a critical part of programming. And if you feel like you need a concept explained in better detail, please feel free to ask me or look it up on Google. Google has some great help for programming. And I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful and learned something. And please subscribe so that you can stay tuned for the next tutorial. And I will see you guys in that next tutorial and in all my other videos that I do. Goodbye.